All right. Well, hi.
Hi.
Nice to see you. Uh, Back to, I don't know, another conversation. Not sure what we're calling this yet, what I'm calling it, but having another conversation. And today I get to share the story of Kim Calderon, who is amazing at all things elementary school and science and life and raising a family and having, yeah. And you said that your last day of school was on Friday.
Yes.
So how did that go?
It was fine. So this year I've been the academic coach for elementary science. And
Yeah.
so we'd been doing different science stuff. And then all of a sudden, that shifted into now we're training people on how to use Google Classroom and Meet and Zoom and all those super fun pieces that, all of a sudden everyone really needed to learn how to use.
Yeah, there was like no option anymore.
Yeah. So that got really interesting. Like it was For me, it was kind of fun because it brought me back to like being able to do tech, which I haven't gotten to do this year really in the new job.
Hmm.
Um, and so getting to train people on things and being the only one in my group that actually used Google Classroom in the classroom was kind of different.
What do you mean that you didn't get to use tech this year? Is that because of the role that you were in?
Yeah, so I switched districts,
Okay.
and in my new role, they're very much they have the tech,
Mhm.
but they don't have like an educational technology department. So the teachers have all this tech, but the kids don't really use it for anything.
Mhm.
Which for me, coming from a district where we did so much of that and had spent so many years like getting to that point,
Yeah.
walking into something where like they don't do it, but they have the capability, but they're not really seeing the full potential. Um, was a little difficult. I think that though, like the transition to having to do it from home and actually seeing what kids can do given the opportunity kind of opened some eyes of
Mhm.
like, oh wow, we are very much underutilizing what we have.
Got it.
So that was, I think, helpful.
Why do you think that there was like hesitation or resistance beforehand?
So they did have like an ed tech director, but it was one of those situations where it was like, oh, we really like this person and we're going to put them in this position that they're really not actually qualified for, but we want to keep them in the district, so we need to move them up somewhere.
Mhm. Mhm.
And it just became this massive situation of like they had no direction. They had a whole slew of coaches for tech, but they didn't have any direction because the person running them really, it seems like, didn't know what to do with ed tech.
Mhm.
And so when that person got moved yet again to another position, the person who took over the group kind of like disbanded the whole thing because which it needed to. It doesn't seem like it was working. Um, but then they've gone a couple years with having it disbanded, and I think now it's that realization of like, oh, we should probably start doing that again, but actually get some people who know what they're doing.
Yeah. So how does that happen? Or how did it happen? Like how did you end up then training people and supporting people during COVID and the whole distance online learning?
So our department, because we're elementary ed services, and we typically do just curriculum, but it became that shift of like, okay, these people need to learn how to use these tools,
Yeah.
and we're kind of the only ones available to teach it. So it was either don't do it at all and ignore it,
Yeah.
and then have all these kids not have anything, or like step up even though it's not really supposed to be our area and
Yeah.
kind of jump in there and make it happen.
Interesting. Yeah, I mean, it's really fascinating to see just the different approaches that different schools and districts took. And I mean, you do what you can to the best of your ability. And then what do you think is going to happen come August if like excuse me, if we actually go back in person? I mean, whatever the situation is, what do you think is going to happen?
So I know kind of we had proposed, and a lot of this came from me, I think, because coming from a district where, I mean, my old district in Fowler, they hit the ground running.
Yeah.
Like they were teaching new content like 2 days after everything closed because we were set up for doing that. So
Yeah.
my boss spent the last kind of like month kind of picking my brain. I'm like, okay, what do we need to do in August? So if schools do have to close kind of like on a more of like a temporary basis, how can we make sure that teachers and kids are ready to make that transition?
Mm-hmm.
And so we talked a lot about, like day one, getting the kids, like everyone's on Google Classroom, and let's learn how to navigate that. So that way the poor kids aren't trying to fumble through it at home without somebody helping.
So Kim, that's you bring up a really good point because one, we had to leverage the technology that we had at hand, right? And so and we've seen huge improvements made across so many different options. But what was a huge concern for me at the onset was this whole idea that like um let's just do that app and that app and that app, and that's going to be the silver bullet, and that's going to be the silver bullet. And while we did need an online platform, like you said, like Meet or Zoom, like something to like video conference, the learning curve, if the students hadn't used an app or a tool or something in the classroom beforehand, then just the learning curve, not only for the students to then learn, but then the families or whomever is supporting the students had to then learn everything. And it's like, what supports did we have, and how thoughtful were people before in thinking about what to actually use, rather than like throwing, it's like spaghetti to a wall and saying, let's stop. So how did you work with that? Like teaching people how to use Google Classroom, for instance, but like making it safe and approachable and not something that was like daunting and that huge learning curve.
So we kind of started like super basic, like this is how you can use, because since Google Classroom works with Aries, and you can, it'll import all your kids. So now you're not trying to figure out a way to get kids codes, right?
Aries is your SIS?
Yeah.
Got it. Okay. Yeah.
And so you make your Google Classroom and it will directly import and automatically plop all your kids in your classroom.
Nice.
Yeah. And
yeah,
it just takes away that piece of like having to make sure, like, because how do you communicate to 30 kids? Like, here's your Google Classroom code, right? I mean, oh my gosh, this way they're already in.
Yeah.
So we kind of started training with like, okay, this is how you do that.
Yeah.
Right. And then we stayed super basic. There's Google Classroom. It doesn't have a ton of bells and whistles, but it can.
Mm-hmm.
And so we stayed like very low level of like, this is how you make an announcement. This is how you like, add that YouTube video.
Yeah.
Or this is how you, like put in a link or make an assignment. And that's kind of as far as we went, because we really wanted, and we had some teachers who would ask for more.
Mm-hmm.
And then so those ones, it's like, okay, on the side, we're giving them more because they're ready to go there. But for a lot of our teachers, they weren't using Google Classroom.
Right.
We had our tech guys run numbers, and only something like 20% total out of our like 550 elementary teachers were utilizing Google Classroom already. So it was that realization of like, we can't go all the way.
Yeah.
We've got to baby step it for them.
Right. That's interesting. Yeah. So then, but also thinking, right, you have to first learn, I like how you said, the basics, right? It's a tool. So you need to learn the features and the functionalities of like, what can it do before you can figure out all the potential. But then how did you, or were you able at all to then bring in the teaching or the training of what online learning looks like and how to convert the curriculum into then Google Classroom? Because like, you can take a worksheet, you can make it into a PDF, but you're not going to do it. It's like, you can't put that into Google Classroom and then expect like that whole flow, So yeah, were you able to teach the teachers at all with anything like
So
that?
we started that kind of like the first kind of chunk, or we called it like the pre-spring break piece,
Okay.
was teaching how to use like those basic tools.
Yeah.
And then post spring break, we did a lot of PD because they were poor guys. Um, all of the site coaches
Yeah.
were told like 2 days before we all went out, and that's just how it rolled out, that they were all going back to the classroom next year. And so they were kind of freaking out about that. And then all of a sudden, hey, by the way, we're going on distance learning. Um, but so they had expressed, most of them had been out of the classroom for multiple years. So they're like, hey, can we have some PD on kind of how to use some of these curriculum pieces?
Yeah.
So in doing those, we focused on how to do those curriculum pieces, but also how to do them and potentially do them digitally. Like, so kind of combining both needs
Mm-hmm.
in a way. And it was open to all teachers.
Cool.
We didn't get a ton of, response, but we also recorded them all. So they're on a doc that has gone out to everybody of like, hey, if you couldn't make it to the live session, here's the recording. Um,
That's good.
so
Yeah.
we'll see. I mean, I think we tried. I know, like I said, we spent a lot of time brainstorming, like, okay, in August, these are the PDs we want to do. And starting to focus more on the pedagogy,
Yeah.
um, as opposed to the actual tool. Because we're like, okay, now you kind of, the tool. Now, how are you actually going to use this?
Right.
And taking it there.
Yeah. Yeah. So do you think that now that people have kind of gotten used to all of this, that there's going to be more desire to keep learning how to use this, or like, what are you predicting for next school
I
year?
think there will, because I think kind of, some of it with tech is that scary of like, I don't know how to use this thing,
Mhm.
right? And now that you kind of didn't have a choice and you had to learn how to use it,
Yeah.
that scary piece is gone, right? Like at least some of it is. And so now I think people are a little more open. It's also highlighted we had some great things already happening in the district that was kind of like on the DL, because teachers were a little bit, we have a couple teachers doing amazing things with Seesaw.
Ooh, tell me more.
But they weren't kind of highlighting it, it was kind of like under the table Seesaw.
Okay.
But those were also the teachers that when we had to switch, those teachers didn't miss a beat because their kids were used to the Seesaw platform.
Mhm.
So they're still delivering content, they're still doing all these things with their kids. And I had one who, she was sharing stuff with me, and then I'm sharing it with my boss, right? Because I'm like, look, this is what her kids are doing.
Yeah.
This is what she's still able to accomplish. What if we bought Seesaw for schools, for elementary, like what if we purchase that and then we leverage a fellow teacher to help train, because she's a Seesaw ambassador. So I'm like, what if we kind of leverage these teachers that are already using it?
Mhm.
And then it's not coming from like, that was our biggest issue, is like, we're the district office coaches, right? So, oh my gosh, we represent the district office. And we're kind of like, well, no, we don't. We're just teachers, like teachers on special assignment. Hi, that's us. But if we can leverage a teacher who's actually using it in her classroom,
Yeah.
to help train and kind of show people what it's all about. So that's kind of where we left some of those pieces. We're like, where can we pull up these kind of like bright spots and then highlight what they're doing to everybody else and show them, it's not this super scary thing.
Exactly. Right. Yeah. I mean, how do you build up the confidence for people, right? And how and I like, yeah, so TOSAs are awesome. TOSAs are super critical, like the connections between district office and what happens at schools. It's, you're the support team, you're the support system. And there was a presentation that I listened in on just last week, actually, on continuous improvement. And one of the findings was that TOSAs are like, TOSAs need more attention. That's the bottom line. TOSAs need PD themselves, because if we're relying on a TOSA to be the liaison and be the support and the coach to the teachers at the school sites, then the TOSAs need to have, they need to receive the PD on whatever the district initiatives are and whatever the district goals are, and to really like power up so that there can be that strength. Because yeah, I mean, your teachers at heart, I think anybody in education is a teacher at heart, no matter what your role is, I think. Because we're all here to teach in some way, you know. But yeah, TOSAs are valuable, and they need, I don't know, you need credit. You definitely need credit, and you need support.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. um how how did you approach um the equity component of your students, like making sure that students had access wherever they were to the technology?
So we struggled with that because a lot of our district is really rural. And
Mhm.
so even giving out hotspots, like one of my sites I was assigned to, you can't even get cell phone service at that site. So a hotspot doesn't really do the kids any good because no service is no service.
Hmm.
Um, and so our superintendent actually kind of through this, you know, it kind of, we've always known it, but it like shines that bigger light on the issue.
Yeah.
So he's actually been kind of in contact with like Verizon and Sprint and being like, hey, we need towers in these areas because we've got kids who can't access because there's no cell service out here.
Yeah.
Um, and so we did have to do packets because for a lot of those kids, that's all we could do, you know. But I think that kind of really starting to tabulate like how many kids that is and how can we get the access there. um, it's unfortunate that it takes kind of like this level of something happening for you to now have that power to go like to the cell phone companies and being like, hey, we need you to work on this, like we need to work together to make this happen.
Yeah.
But you do like, it's kind of because now you do have that leverage point of like, look at, we're trying to teach these kids, we need your help.
Yeah.
um, so we're hoping that that kind of at least moves forward and we can start getting so that way those kids can have access.
There's a video, uh I know it's part of the 1 million project. I can't remember the name of the video, something like homework division, homework gap, homework something. And what they did was they showed two groups of students like separated by a screen, and the parents were in the audience. It was like in an auditorium or something like that. And the one side, and then there was a narrator or like an MC reading off, whatever questions, like trivia questions, it's like, where is this country located and whatever, right? And first it was like the softball, like soft throw questions, and okay, fine. And then as questions got harder, one group was able to answer the questions super fast, and the other group was like, wait a second, how is this happening? How are they getting these questions all right? Well, what either side didn't realize was that one group of students had their laptops with the internet, and they were able to look up the questions, right? Like just basic, like let's Google it, right? The other group had to refer back to their encyclopedias and textbooks and whatever else, right?
Yeah.
And uh, you could just see that the disadvantage of not having technology access had for those students. And it's a pretty powerful message that if our kids are going to succeed, we need to give them the tools to do that.
Oh yeah. Well, and especially when you consider, I mean, at least in our area, a lot of those kids who don't have access are also our lower income families are very high, like English learner population families where they're already struggling with other pieces. And
Mhm.
now we throw that into the mix too. And it's, I mean, just completely widening that gap further and further for them.
Right. You know, and that, yeah, it's heartbreaking to see, because you want to give I mean, I think about my own kids, right? I want to give my kids more than what I had growing up, right? And that's a huge sense of privilege to be able to at least try to offer that, or want to offer that. I don't um but you know, and then you think about, yeah, the families that aren't able to offer that, and it's heartbreaking. And
Mhm.
so how are we, you know, as school districts and as taxpayers and local government authorities and state government authorities and federal government authorities, like making sure that every student has the right to succeed.
Yeah.
I don't know. How are your kids doing with all of this?
They actually, we weren't too bad. Their district took a little bit to get their act together, on at least like sending devices home.
Okay.
So like they immediately had, on the website you could go and, I mean, it's Fresno Unified. It's the fourth largest district in the state. So they just came up with like generic lesson plan, right? But it was the whole day. So it's like for ELA, you're going to go into Wonders and you're going to do this.
Yep.
For math, you're going to go here and you're going to do this, right? But
Mhm,
a lot of it relied on kids having some kind of device.
mhm,
Well, we're fortunate enough, like I had a work laptop. So my third grader is on my personal laptop doing his stuff.
mhm,
Um, my other one, we have a really old iMac. So my first grader is on that, kind of trying to navigate his stuff. But the hard part, I'm thinking like, so in my job, I've had to learn how to use Wonders. So
mhm,
I can help them navigate and find pieces. And the first thing I thought about was like, what about all these parents who have no idea? Because there's a to-do list in Wonders. And so if the teacher went in there and put stuff in there, it's easy.
mhm.
But this was all from the district, so it wasn't even necessarily where my kids exactly were. It's kind of like that you should be here because this is district pacing, but every class is a little different. So I had to navigate Wonders and actually find their stuff, and I'm like, okay, I know how to do that,
Mhm.
but most parents do not know how to do that.
Yeah.
And so, it just makes that thing of like, not only did we not have devices until maybe middle of April,
Mm.
they only gave them out third grade and up. So my first grader still never got a device. Um, so it just makes those realizations like my kids are fairly lucky because we do have access.
Mhm.
Like my husband works in a tech field, I'm a tech nerd, like we have all this extra stuff, that they can use.
Yeah.
But most kids don't have that access. Not to mention now you've put it all on these parents who they don't know where the heck to go to find some of these pieces.
Yeah.
Like so how like I just worry. I'm like, I had a hard enough time managing while I'm trying to work, and my husband's trying to work from home, and we've got all three kids, and I'm just thinking like, okay, and my kids can actually do some of the work. What
Mhm.
about all the families who parents are working from home and their kids can't access the work? Because now what are you doing?
Yeah.
And my little guy, because he's 4, so like lots of leapfrog happened on the TV for him.
Yep.
Because I'm like, I don't know what else to, like I have to work. Like I'm trying to give a PD
Mhm.
and he's like wanting attention and I'm like, buddy, this is not gonna work, mommy's gotta do a PD on Zoom.
Yep. Yeah, they
Um,
always they need you. They don't need you when you're available, and then they need you the minute you're on.
yep.
Yeah, my girls, I think it was like during their lunch hour recess time, because their school did a really great job in facilitating on a platform, and I was I was in a 2-hour meeting. I think I had to be on for like maybe 20, 25 minutes in like sharing something. So I went outside because the kids were doing their stuff inside. Thought it'd be quieter. Ends up, they have their lunch because we would like pre-pack lunches in case I'd be in meetings. So everything would be like totally fine. And then they do their recess. They come behind me with a hose and I'm on the camera. And next thing I feel is like water just spraying on me. And everyone is seeing this and hearing it because I'm on like the 25 minutes that I needed. No, they're right behind me and I am cold. Like my body's in shock, and I'm just like, just going right along. And I'm like, you've got to be kidding me. Like of all the times.
Oh my gosh.
And of course, like that was just like comic relief for everybody, then at that point. But I'm just like, seriously. But so like, I'm just thinking, how, but right, like I love the technology, right? Like in the field, knowing all of it, feeling like the kids were somewhat fortunate, to have that opportunity. But I think about like what support systems were then put in place for families. Like I think about like like was there a helpline? Like 1-800 help me. Like I have no clue what I'm doing. I don't know. Like, did you do anything? Did your district do anything?
So the kids' school or the district had a helpline, because once we got the laptop, of course, it won't work because they had to re-image them to be used at home. The only problem is they didn't finish the re-image.
They have to be on the network to sign on, don't
Yeah. And they didn't do that piece. So I get this laptop and I'm trying to get in and I'm like feeling really stupid. I'm like, I know how to get into a Chromebook. It's not hard.
Yeah.
And it won't work. And I'm like, what the heck is going on? So I called the help desk and had to leave a message because they have too many people calling, because this is like, and then the district, because apparently, everyone is calling about this, sends out like a district-wide email saying, oh, you need to go like at least close enough to a campus to get on the Wi-Fi to finish the imaging process, and then you're fine. Luckily, we live down the street from one of the elementaries, so I just drove down there and did it really fast. Yeah. But I'm just like super frustrated. So I can't imagine how many phone calls they got, like just trying to get people on. And then immediately, like if it's that hard to get on, you're immediately like, okay, now I'm irritated. Now I don't want to use this thing. And so I just wonder how much that little piece might have turned off some parents as well.
Right.
Because, oh, I have to go do that, like little things like that where I'm kind of like, okay, tech guys, you got to finish the process first.
It's true. Think it. Like, I know. It's, yeah. Oh my gosh. Yeah. Well, but your kids seem to be doing okay.
Yeah. And what I found interesting is we didn't have to turn the Chromebook back in.
Oh.
Like I still have it.
Okay.
And as one of the tech people, like at in Fowler, we were take home 612, but at the end of the school year, the kids bring them back and then we spend, they spend the summer kind of cleaning them and fixing whatever's broken. Yeah. And all I can think in my head is like, oh my gosh, you're letting kids keep them at home. How are you going to do this next year when they all bring them back in August and they all need to be cleaned or fixed? Mm-hmm. Because now if we have to clean them and fix them, they won't be in classrooms. So how long are they not going to be in classrooms because you now have to do this whole process?
Unless you're not in classrooms.
Yeah, and maybe they're not. I don't know. But that's my other thing too, is like they should be, because if you are, I feel like we should all be counting on the potential for having to be out, even if it's a shorter amount of time. Yep. I think we need to be there. In your brain, you need to be thinking like, okay, at any time I could be told we're out for the next 2 weeks.
Right.
Well, that means that I need to hit August hard of like, this is how we use whatever our LMS is. Mm-hmm. This is how you can get on Wonders and access whatever we're doing,
Yeah.
right? Like all those pieces. So that way the parents don't have to try and figure it out because their kid already knows.
Right.
I mean, that's why I think like some districts were super successful because they use it all the time in class. So
Yeah.
those kids totally already knew what they were doing. Like
Mhm.
they didn't need mom's help because like, no, I got this. Right? It's like when my kid's on Minecraft and he's trying to show me something. I'm like, what does that do? He's like, oh, don't touch that. You're gonna do this. I don't know how to use that thing, but he does.
Yep.
And but if we're spending August cleaning and fixing Chromebooks, as a teacher, I can't really do what I need to do.
Yeah. Yeah, you bring up a good point. It's like, then what plans and contingency plans and plans on top of those contingencies are getting developed?
Mhm.
Because yeah, I actually didn't even think about, like, okay, so what if we go back in person in August, but at any given time, how are we prepared to then be out for like the 2 weeks or three or whatever duration it is? And so, yeah, what supports are there? Yeah, what are we doing? So that's interesting. Um, do you miss socializing in person?
Yes. So it's funny. So my husband's been because tennis is like the sport you can actually play
Yeah.
and be fine,
Yeah.
right? So he's been playing tennis, and I'm really bad at tennis. I swing a racket like a softball bat. It's just not pretty. But he's been going and playing tennis,
Hmm.
and I'm like, okay. So I went out on Monday and played tennis, and I'm horrible, and it's pretty funny to watch. But it was like amazing because I'm like, I'm around people. Like there's people. And so there's like, and we went to the beach, and it was really amazing because there were a lot of people at the beach, but everyone was really cognizant of like being spread out.
Hmm.
And so it was interesting to see all these people at this beach, but there was definitely like 6 feet between each little like camp, like your little spot.
Yeah.
So like you're around people, but you're not actually like socializing with them as much because you don't want to be right next to them.
Yeah.
So it's been interesting.
How was it before going out and playing tennis on the beach? Like, how were you able to deal with not socializing in person?
Um, so I'm like super introverted anyways. So for me, not a huge step. Definitely more text messaging with people, like, because normally you would see them every day and you don't. So that, and then Zoom
Yeah.
was really good. Ed Campos with CVQ was hosting like weekly, like little like hour-long Zoom things, and that was fun because then you got to like see people and get to say hi.
Yeah.
Um,
It's almost like it made it easier for people to come together at some point, because then you didn't have to like coordinate driving someplace or getting a sitter if you had to get
mhm.
a sitter. Like, it just, I feel like it made it so much easier. I even think about like the parent association meetings at my kids' school. It was like, yeah, you don't have to come in person. You can attend through video.
Yeah, I know our one of like my boss was saying that they actually are getting more people at the school board meetings because they don't have to be there in person.
Mhm.
She's like, the school board Zoom meetings are packed because people can just do it from home and they don't have to actually, go down there and like sit for 3 hours. They can just have the meeting on and be listening while they're doing other things.
Yeah. Yeah. It's like, I got into Audible during all of this, and it's like I can fold laundry and listen to a book. And I have read so many books this spring, read books, and I'm like, why have I not gotten into this earlier? It's been awesome. But yeah, I mean, you can listen to the meeting, fold your laundry, make dinner, do something
Mhm.
in the background. Um, yeah, so that's good. I don't know.
Yeah, I think it's made a huge like just in little stuff like that. But I think that helps, right? Even just to hear to hear someone else's voice besides like your kids and your husband,
Yeah.
you know? I'm like, "Ooh, other people. It sounds different."
Which is maybe why I finally wanted to start this project. I don't know, this thing of talking to people, because it's like I want to have different conversations. I want to talk about different things with people and learn from people. So, yeah, awesome. How how are you navigating the conversations with your kids about race and hate and anything with Black Lives Matter?
So it's been interesting because their school is, which is weird, but like for Fresno, we're in a fairly non-diverse part of Fresno,
Yeah.
which for me is odd because I grew up in San Jose,
Mhm.
and at my high school there was no majority, right? Like there was no particular like kind of race that had a majority on campus.
Mhm.
So I grew up with that complete mix of friends and of, like, so for me it's been kind of like, okay, but so trying to kind of just really instill in them those values of like everyone has value to society no matter like where you are, or like, and everyone goes through different things, and just really teaching them how to kind of realize that everyone's reality is not your own,
Yeah.
and that they come from a place where mommy and daddy can provide a lot of things that other parents can't,
Mhm.
um and that they're, because of their skin color, they're actually viewed a little bit differently, than and they don't understand that, right? Like my 8-year-old he's like, but why? He's like, it shouldn't matter. And I'm like, nobody, it shouldn't matter. I'm like, but to some people it does,
Mhm.
and you just need to constantly keep that in your head of like, it doesn't matter. You are, you're my friend and I don't care.
Mhm.
um and just trying to really get to that piece because they really, they're young. I mean, my oldest is 8, and he doesn't care who his friends are. He's
Yeah.
like, but he's my friend. Why is it different?
Yeah, you're right. There's the different level of understanding for the kids depending on how old they are, cuz even with my 6-year-old, my youngest, she's like, "I have white skin." I said, "Yes, you do." And she said, "And so has black skin." I said, "Yep." And she's like, "But he's my friend." I said, "Absolutely. Absolutely." And so like your 8-year-old, like they don't see that skin color determines how somebody's treated. They love everyone.
Hmm.
And and then my oldest, who's 12, he uh he understands that skin color determines how somebody is treated. He gets that concept.
Hmm.
He doesn't understand why people hate each other and why people are violent against each other because of the skin color. So we're definitely, yeah, I'm trying to keep reading the age appropriate books and talking even more than before. Um, and I think that it's great that the kids do have a diverse demographic that they interact with, but it's I mean, they're still I would say they're pretty sheltered and secluded. So I don't know. I'm actually curious to see what happens with curriculum come
Hmm.
August. We've been talking a lot about like culturally responsive curriculum, but which is fantastic. Um, I'm wondering like what hard push will there be? Kind of like the tech push.
Right.
So, yeah, it's Yeah, I'll be curious to see what happens with that.
Yeah, I think it'll and hit I mean, I just think of like, because my friend teaches eighth grade history, which includes like Civil War
Hmm.
and all that kind of stuff. And I think it depends on who teaches it, because he reads like they read like slave narratives and that because he wants the kids to kind of understand like this happened, like. And I think that's where some of the hard part is some teachers just want to be like, oh, it happened and moving on, right?
Hmm.
And but to really take that thing of like, look at this happened, and part of the reason why we even study history is so we don't make the same mistakes and we move forward,
Yeah.
and really like he tries to focus on that a lot. Like he spends, I think, way more time than technically he's supposed to
Hmm.
on like Civil War and those pieces, because he's like, no, this is important, we need to move beyond this.
That's, yeah. So there was a piece. Oh my gosh, where did I read it? See, I've been reading like everything that I could get my hands on, like whether it's, an article on Insta or on Twitter or wherever it is. And it was like when white people talk about race, something along those lines, right? And or something like when well-intentioned people talk about race, right? Something along those lines.
No?
And um we may not have all the answers, but being comfortable with the discomfort of being able to talk about it. And for the teachers who move right past it, like, oh, it happened, moving on,
Mm-hmm.
how are we taking the time to talk about it?
Yeah.
Um, yeah. So it's been a year. Oh. I miss I miss learning from people, like going to conferences, or I know that, right, there have been like the huge virtual
Mm-hmm.
conferences taking place, and that has been so exciting and progressive that you don't have to, I think about like the budget season, right? I mean, everyone's going through budget cuts, and usually PD is the first thing to get cut.
Yeah.
And what we're seeing now is that you don't have to physically attend a conference if your district doesn't have the funds to send you. You can definitely attend virtually. I hope that then, like, when conferences do pick up again in person, because I think there's value to learning in person, and I miss the networking and having the side conversations and learning from people. So I hope that the conferences offer the virtual attendance option, and I really hope that we can pick back up in person, because I really miss meeting new people, meeting new like-minded people, um, and learning from each other. I don't know.
Yeah. Like I've liked the virtual ones. Like it's been good to at least still get that piece, especially right now because people are doing so many different things with different tools,
Yeah.
and leveraging stuff, and I'm loving learning it, but I totally miss that, like, you're right, like those side conversations of, like in the hallway, like, hey, you just talked to, and then, and then all of a sudden you're like, oh shoot, I totally missed like 2 sessions because we've been talking about this in the hallway. But I totally agree. Like, I feel like, before conferences would take like their highlighted speakers and those would get recorded. But I'm
Mhm.
kind of wondering if like now it's just going to be maybe more of the norm of we try to do everybody and not just those like big name highlighted people,
Mhm.
but we try to expand it more.
Right. Absolutely. And thinking about not, yeah, I'm just so curious to see like what topics, what categories, what's all going to be offered in the future. Like, because what I saw happening was that year after year, the topics that were offered were advancing in skill and in knowledge. And what I saw happen was that it was almost like this assumption that people have been moving along
Mhm.
with everything, and I'll just use the global we forgot to continue offering the foundations. And so, but like offer the foundations in context. So learn the features and functionalities of then actually building something and applying it to something, right? And I hope that we can remember that when things pick up again. Like, don't forget the foundations. You need the foundations, because there's always new people who show up. There are always, I mean, think right now, like people still need the foundations. They need to get comfortable. It's repetition.
Oh yeah. Well, I just think of like there's so many, like when we offered Google Classroom, and it was amazing how many people like, showed up to your virtual PD for Google Classroom. And you make that, like we're all tech people, so we make that assumption of like, oh, everybody already knows how to use it. We don't need to do a PD on that. No, we still do.
Yeah.
We make those assumptions of, yeah, our little ed tech group, yes, we all know how to do that.
Yeah,
But a lot of people don't. Like they're not there yet.
exactly.
And they're not teaching it in credential programs either, because I can't tell you how many like first year teachers were attending our sessions and they're like, nobody ever told me about this thing.
Yeah. Well, right. So, okay, Kim, seriously. So, okay, this is what I get maybe a little on my soapbox, but not really. I don't know. Where nobody in my teacher credential program, prep, whatever, taught me how to use a copy machine. But on day one, I had to learn how to use a copy machine, right? As a teacher.
Mm-hmm.
There was no PD on it. There was no training on it. You kind of just learned how to do it, right? And so part of me is like, okay, Google Classroom, that's like the beauty of Google. They start out without the like bells and whistles of everything, because they want you to acclimate one feature at a time.
Mm-hmm.
Acclimate to one feature at a time. Like you can kind of like pick it up, like get in there, start clicking things around. You're not going to break anything, and like pick it up. And so that's why, part of me is like, really? But on the other hand, to your earlier point, like it is scary. If you've never done something, how can you have your hand held a little bit to build up your confidence and to like get you started and get you going? You can't just be left all on your own. I don't so yeah, and that's when I'm just like, yeah, we need the foundations. We need people who know the foundations to support the people who need the foundations.
Yeah. Well, and I think because you're going to have somewhere I can show you for 5 minutes
Mhm.
and you're off to the races, right? You're like, no, I got this. I'm good to go. Like, we'll figure it out. But then you've got other ones who I may have to show you 5 or 6 times.
Yeah.
Like I love my old PE colleagues, but we were on year 8 of me showing them how to set up their Aries grade book in August because, we're still not there yet. And they were getting better. Like every year they could do a little bit further before they got stuck.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like so we're baby stepping it, but eventually like they'll get there. But there are, there's that, and there's everyone in between that too,
Right.
you know?
Yeah.
And we were talking a lot about, looking at some of these different tools, and not necessarily like you were talking about earlier, like, okay, Google Forms, this is how you use Forms. Okay, but how do I use it with my kids,
Mhm.
right? What's the pedagogy that goes with Google Forms?
Yeah.
Because that's what I think a lot of these things leave out. It's like, here, this is how you make a form. Great. Show me how to use it where it's actually, I can use it with my students to get what I need. Now I'm actually going to use it in my classroom.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. And I think it's similar to general curriculum as well, where, if we can be innovative and progressive and have integrated curriculum, it's not science for 45 minutes, it's not math for 45 minutes, it's not ELA for 45 minutes, you see it all intertwined. It's then thinking about, okay, if you've got a Google form, how can you mash it up with other things, right? So you've got then Google Sheets, and then can you write about or somehow draw what you're seeing, right, out of the data or whatever information you're collecting. I mean, there's ways to do it. But right, that relevance piece is super huge, and that's often missing.
Yes.
Yeah, I don't know. It'll be, yeah, I'm excited to see what happens. And you're going to stay in your same role?
No, so I actually got a new job,
Oh,
new school.
congratulations.
So I'm moving to it's called CTech. It's a career tech ed high school, charter school
Okay.
that's run through Fresno County Office of Ed. So I'm actually going to teach biology.
So
Yeah,
how are
I'm
you
really.
preparing for that?
Hmm?
How are you preparing for that?
So it's been interesting, like, because they do concurrent enrollment with the city college.
Uh-huh.
And so we kind of had to pick like one of their biology classes to then translate into like a full year high school class, but that they can also get concurrent enrollment for.
Mm-hmm.
So I got to make up a whole new class, right? But I'm super excited. We're doing integrated environmental biology is what we decided to call it.
Oh, how fun.
And it's basically I'm teaching biology, but through basically like with a focus on like environmental issues and like how that all ties together. Because
Mm-hmm.
my goal is to make it as like real world applicable for these kids as possible.
Yeah.
So like when the heck am I going to have to learn this, or why do I need to do this? Okay,
Mm-hmm.
well this is why. And stuff like that. And then it's a CTE school, and their focus is construction and manufacturing.
Mm-hmm.
So also trying to figure out like, okay, how can we tie in like construction with environmental impact and biology all in there, all in like combination lessons and stuff like that. So I'm
Mm-hmm.
excited.
That's so great. Congratulations.
Thanks.
You're going to have to keep me posted on how things are going. And then, yeah, come August, like how it all kicked off. That's fantastic.
Yeah.
I'm happy for you.
And the nice thing is like with our school, because with construction manufacturing, like the kids need to be on campus to do those classes.
Mm-hmm.
So most of our conversations have been like, okay, if we need to do some kind of weird hybrid thing,
Yeah.
the kids will come for their like construction class and their science class so we can do labs.
Got it. Okay.
And then like ELA, math, and history would then be done more like virtually because those are a little bit easier to kind
Mm-hmm.
of facilitate in a virtual environment as opposed to, me trying to get kids to do like a biology lab.
Yeah, you need
Oh,
to be there.
yeah, just a little bit.
Yeah, just a little bit. Gosh. Wow, that's going to be a great new journey for you. I'm really happy for you.
Yeah, I'm excited. It's a different, like I feel like I've bounced around
Mhm.
now for the last like 2 years. I'm like, got a new job, stayed there for a year, and now I'm moving over here. But I missed working with kids.
Yeah.
Like that was my hardest part, and was like, and I like working with teachers, but I'm like, I kind of would rather work with the kids.
Yeah. Well,
They're
I'm
more fun.
glad that's happening for you. Good for you.
Thanks.
Yeah, good. Um, well, I want to thank you for taking the time to share your story and share your insights. And it's been, yeah, it's been a wild ride. And I hope that we can do this again, maybe in the fall, like part two, and let us know.
Oh,
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, let us know how the new job is going and how things are going with biology and your kids and how your, tennis is going in the fall.
yeah, we'll see. My knee does not like tennis, so not sure how that's gonna play out.
No pun intended.
No pun intended.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Kim. Um, and let's stay in touch.
All right. Yeah. Thank you.